Imagine waking up, like right in the middle of the night.
Right.
You're totally startled, your heart is just racing, and someone is shaking your shoulder.
Yeah, that terrifying kind of waking up.
Exactly. And they're telling you, like, hey, it's time to get up, time to pray, time to do this genuinely good deed. And then your eyes adjust to the dark, and you look up, and the person standing right over you is the devil.
It is just the ultimate paradox. I mean, the architect of human downfall acting as your personal spiritual alarm clock.
Right. It immediately breaks your brain. Like, why on earth would the ultimate antagonist want you to do something good?
It makes no sense on the surface.
None at all. And that intense, almost like a psychological thriller level of tension, that is exactly where we are going today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We are taking the murky, totally unpredictable, and let's be honest, often frustratingly deceptive landscape of the human mind. And we're looking at it through this lens that is centuries old, yet shockingly, almost uncomfortably relevant to you right now.
Yeah, it really is uncomfortable sometimes.
It is. We're unpacking excerpts from Volume 8 of Tahir Mivlevi's brilliant commentary on Rumi's Masnavi.
Which is, to put it plainly, it is a surgical deconstruction of the human ego.
Surgical is the right word for it.
Yeah, because we tend to think of these ancient texts as just, dusty, esoteric poetry, like something you'd read in a boring lit class.
Right, like it has no bearing on actual modern life.
Exactly. But they are actually these incredibly sophisticated behavioral manuals. They map out the fractured, really complicated ways that we deceive ourselves.
And our mission today is to extract those exact mechanisms.
Yeah.
We want to figure out how these ancient parables map, like, directly onto your modern life. Because we're going to look at the tricks our ego plays on us, the really profound difference between just being, smart and actually being wise.
Which are two very different things.
So different.
Yeah.
And how to navigate a world that is just completely obsessed with appearances. And the crazy thing is, the human operating system, it basically hasn't had a single core update since these words were written.
Not a single one. We are running the exact same hardware. And the brilliance of this commentary is that it assumes you, the reader, are already highly intelligent.
Okay, right.
It doesn't talk down to you. Its goal is to bypass your intellect entirely and speak directly to your blind spots.
Because our intellect is usually what's getting in the way, right?
Absolutely. It uses stories as mirrors, intricately designed to make you question your own underlying motives.
Well, let's jump right into the first mirror then, because it perfectly captures this exact tension between being highly intelligent and being utterly blind.
Let's do it.
So imagine a Bedouin traveling through a really harsh desert. He's got his camel, and the camel is loaded down with two massive sacks.
Right.
One sack is full of wheat, and this is his actual sustenance, his livelihood, his entire wealth.
His whole life in a bag.
Basically, yeah. But the other sack is just full of sand. Completely useless, heavy sand.
Which is a seemingly absurd setup to an outsider, looking in.
Exactly. So he's traveling along, and he runs into a philosopher, a real armchair intellectual type.
Oh, I know the type.
We all do. So the philosopher looks at this ridiculous setup, strokes his chin, and offers this brilliant, entirely logical solution.
Yeah.
He asks the Bedouin, like, why are you carrying sand? And the Bedouin says, oh, it's just for balance, so the heavy sack of wheat doesn't slide off.
Makes sense to him.
Right, so the philosopher smiles and says, why are you making your camel carry all that useless weight? Just take half the wheat from the first sack, put it into the empty second sack, dump the sand out entirely, and boom, your camel is carrying half the weight, and it's perfectly balanced.
It is a flawless optimization strategy. On a spreadsheet, the philosopher has just doubled the camel's efficiency.
Right, and rationally, I kind of have to side with the philosopher here. It's basic physics.
Of course.
It's exactly like a modern consultant coming into a business, looking at the workflow and pointing out a massive inefficiency. Like, just merge these two departments, drop this legacy software, and you save 50% on overhead. The math works perfectly.
It always works perfectly on the whiteboard.
Exactly. And the Bedouin is blown away. He thinks he's just met an absolute genius. So out of deep respect, he invites the philosopher to ride on his camel, and as they travel, he starts asking the philosopher about his incredibly successful life.
And this is the pivot. This right here is where the text turns the mirror back on the intellect itself.
Yeah, because the Bedouin says, with a mind like yours, a mind that can solve problems so elegantly, you must be a king, or at least like a really wealthy vizier. How much land do you own? How many camels do you have? Where's your shop?
He's expecting a billionaire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the philosopher, probably, looking down at his feet, says, I don't have any camels. I don't have a shop. I don't own any land.
The Bedouin is confused, obviously, but he presses on.
Yeah, he says, okay, well, how much money do you have in the bank? And the philosopher has to admit, I don't even have enough money to buy dinner tonight. I run around barefoot and hungry, just hoping someone will take pity on me and give me a piece of bread.
Wow. Okay, so analyze the mechanism of what is happening here. The text is setting up a really stark contrast between instrumental rationality and applied wisdom.
Instrumental rationality,
Meaning the ability to just process data. The philosopher has immense processing power. He can look at a system like the camel's load and optimize it theoretically, but his intellect is completely decoupled from his own survival.
But wait, just because the guy is poor doesn't make his math wrong.
Right?
Like if a homeless guy tells me 2 + 2 is 4, I'm not going to throw away my calculator.
Yeah.
Why should the Bedouin care about the philosopher's bank account if the camel loading system is objectively better?
That's a great point. But it's because the text is arguing that knowledge isn't just raw data. Knowledge is an ecosystem.
An ecosystem.
Yeah. If a system of thought does not yield actual flourishing for the person holding it, it is a diseased system. In the commentary, it explicitly notes that worldly wisdom increases doubt and suspicion, while religious wisdom, or true applied wisdom, elevates the soul.
Oh, interesting.
So the Bedouin's reaction is a crucial takeaway here. He doesn't say, oh, you poor genius, let me help you.
Right.
He is utterly horrified.
He is. He practically throws the guy off the camel. He immediately stops, makes the philosopher get off, and says, get away from me. Your wisdom is a curse. It hasn't even saved you from starvation. Keep your cursed intellect away from my camel so your bad luck doesn't rub off on me.
He actively chooses his heavy, inefficient sand over the elegant, optimized logic of the philosopher.
And he's right to do so, according to the text.
Absolutely right. The Bedouin represents a grounded, functional interaction with reality. His system might be clunky, sure, but it feeds him. The philosopher's system is elegant, but he is literally starving to death. Think about how this maps onto our modern information diets.
Oh, man. It's terrifyingly accurate. I mean, you open any social media app, and it is just flooded with philosophers telling you how to optimize your morning routine, your microbiome, your investment portfolio, your relationships.
Yes, the optimization gurus.
Right. But if you actually pull back the curtain on the lives of the people aggressively peddling this optimization, they are often chronically stressed, burnt out, and essentially like barefoot and starving in an emotional or spiritual sense.
Precisely. They have optimized the sand, but they have lost the wheat.
Optimize the sand. I love that. I'm keeping that phrase.
It's yours. But seriously, we have built an entire culture around instrumental reason, finding the absolute most efficient way to do things, without ever pausing to ask if the things we are doing actually nourish us.
Yeah.
The Bedouin's rejection of the philosopher is a rejection of useless complexity. It's this profound realization. If your brilliant intellectual framework doesn't bring you peace, stability, or joy, why on earth would I adopt it?
Why would I want it? We spend so much time rearranging the heavy, useless parts of our lives just to make them slightly easier to carry instead of just, dumping the sand entirely.
Exactly.
But this raises a really interesting dilemma for me.
Okay, what's that?
If the truly wise people recognize that all this superficial optimization is a trap, how do they actually survive in a society that constantly demands it? Because if you have genuine wisdom, but everyone around you is just acting like that barefoot philosopher, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb.
How you become a target. Society does not tolerate people who refuse to play the game of superficial intellect.
They really don't.
They will either try to elevate you to serve their institutions, or they will destroy you. Which leads to a classic survival strategy in Eastern philosophy, the Malamati, or the wise fool.
Right, the wise fool. This is the guy who deliberately acts crazy to hide his spiritual station.
Yeah.
And the story here is so bizarre, it honestly feels like a fever dream.
It's definitely one of the stranger ones.
So there is a man who is desperately seeking advice on marriage. He's heard of this incredibly wise sage who lives in a certain town. But when he finally tracks the sage down, he finds him in the town square running around like a toddler.
Literally playing.
Yes. The guy is literally straddling a reed, pretending it's a horse, making galloping noises and playing tag with the local children.
You can imagine the seeker's profound disappointment.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, he's traveled all this way for transcendent life advice, and the guru is playing make-believe with a piece of grass.
But the seeker is desperate, so he chases the sage down anyway. He says, please, just stop your horse for a second. I need advice on marriage. And the sage, without even breaking character, drops this incredibly sharp, pragmatic breakdown.
He doesn't miss a beat.
Not a single beat. He says there are 3 types of women in the world. The first is a virgin. She will be wholly yours. The second is a widow. She will be half yours and half in her past. The third is a woman who already has children from a previous marriage. She will never truly be yours because her heart will always be with your children.
Brutally pragmatic.
And as soon as he finishes the sentence, he yells, "Giddy up!" and gallops away on his stick.
Now, we need to contextualize that advice because to modern ears, it might sound merely transactional or even a bit harsh.
Right, sounds a little outdated.
It does. But in the sociological context of that era, this was considered deeply astute, pragmatic advice about the division of emotional labor, attachment trauma, and the realities of blended families.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, it's highly observant psychology delivered by a man pretending to ride a stick.
And the seeker realizes this immediately. The advice is so lucid that the seeker knows this guy isn't crazy at all. So he chases the sage down a second time and demands an explanation. You have an intellect that surpasses everyone in this city. You are clearly a genius. Why on earth are you acting like a crazy toddler?
The sage's answer here reveals the entire architecture of his survival strategy.
Which is fascinating.
He drops the act, looks at the man, and explains the institutional trap he is actively avoiding. He says that the townspeople recognize his vast knowledge, and because they recognize it, they have decided they want to appoint him as their qadi, their chief judge.
But hold on, being a judge in that society is the pinnacle, right? It's the highest position of authority, respect, and well, why would anyone run from that? Isn't it his duty to use his wisdom to help people?
And that is the exact trap the ego sets. I should take power so I can do good. But the sage understands the mechanism of power. He tells the seeker, if I take that position, I will be surrounded by bribery, by vicious politics, by the relentless pressure to compromise my values for the sake of institutional harmony.
I'm going to eat him alive.
Exactly. He says, my intellect is a pure jewel, a hidden treasure. If I bring it out into their marketplace, they will corrupt it. They don't want my wisdom. They want my rubber stamp on their corruption.
Wow. My intellect is a pure jewel. He just flat out refuses to sell it for worldly prestige.
Exactly. So to protect his treasure, he plays the fool. He says, I'd rather be thought of as a madman and keep my soul intact than be respected as a judge and lose it. It is the strategic deployment of incompetence to protect your core bandwidth and your moral integrity.
The strategic deployment of incompetence.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people listening to this have done some micro version of this in their own lives.
Oh, definitely.
Like, have you ever purposely played dumb at a massive family gathering just so you wouldn't get dragged into a toxic circular political debate?
All the time.
You just sit there and nod, looking perfectly vacant while your uncle rants, because you know if you deploy your actual intellect, it's just going to drain your soul.
Or consider the workplace environment. Have you ever deliberately downplayed your competence in a highly tedious, soul-crushing administrative task?
Yes.
Because you know the absolute truth of corporate life. The reward for being really good at a terrible job is that it becomes your permanent job.
Exactly. If you show them you can fix a spreadsheet, you are the spreadsheet guy forever. You have to play the fool, or the institution will consume you.
Right.
The sage knows that true knowledge is a substance you cultivate for yourself, like a sugarcane field producing its own sweetness.
Right.
It's not a commodity to be traded for external validation.
This is the fundamental link between the first two stories. The Bedouin rejects the philosopher because intellect unmoored from reality is useless.
Right.
The sage hides his intellect because society will commodify and ruin it. In both cases, the enemy is the ego's desire to be seen as smart, capable, or powerful.
Which brings us to the flip side of this dynamic. We just saw a wise man acting foolish to hide his pure heart. But what happens when the ego takes the steering wheel completely?
It gets messy.
Very messy. You get people acting pure specifically to hide their foolish hearts.
Mm.
You get the illusion of righteousness.
This is where Tahir Mevlevi's commentary becomes incredibly precise about the neurobiology and psychology of hypocrisy. It isolates exactly how we weaponize virtue.
And it does it with one of the funniest, most relatable stories in the whole text.
Yeah.
The story of the 4 Hindus praying in the mosque.
I love this one.
It's so good. So picture this scene. 4 men are lined up in the mosque, standing shoulder to shoulder, deep in communal prayer. Total silence, total devotion.
Very serious atmosphere.
Very serious. But suddenly, the muezzin, the official who calls the prayer, walks into the room. The first man, without even thinking, breaks his concentration and blurts out, "Hey, is it time for the call to prayer yet?"
A momentary lapse. A simple mistake driven by an external distraction. By speaking, he legally invalidates his ritual prayer, but the motive is relatively innocent.
Right, he just lost focus.
Right.
But then the dominoes start falling. The second man standing next to him gets incredibly annoyed by this breach of protocol. He turns to the first man and snaps, "You fool! You spoke. You just broke your prayer."
Right.
But in his eagerness to correct the first guy, the second guy has now spoken during the prayer, breaking his own prayer.
This introduces the first layer of ego. The ego of correction, the dopamine hit of being the one who enforces the rules.
It's irresistible, isn't it? Like you just have to point it out.
Oh, human nature loves it.
But it doesn't stop there. The third man sees this happen. He turns to the second man and starts laughing, saying, "Why are you scolding him? Look at yourself. You just did the exact same thing." So now the third man's prayer is broken too.
And here we have the second layer, the ego of meta-superiority.
Meta-superiority.
Yes. The third man feels superior not just to the rule breaker, but to the rule enforcer. He thinks his self-awareness makes him immune, but he falls into the exact same behavioral trap.
But the masterpiece of this story is the fourth man.
He is the best part.
He has watched this entire train wreck happen beside him. He stands tall, puffs out his chest, looks up to heaven, and confidently says out loud, "Praise be to God, I didn't fall into the trap and speak like those three idiots." And boom, his prayer is broken too.
It is a brilliant, escalating cascade of self-sabotage.
It really is.
All four of them failed, but the progression of why they failed reveals the entire architecture of self-righteousness.
I struggle a little with the second guy, though.
How so?
Well, isn't there a place for correcting someone who is doing something wrong? Like, why does the text judge the guy who is just trying to uphold the rules of the prayer?
Because the text forces us to examine the source of the correction. Was the second man correcting the first out of deep, compassionate concern for his friend's spiritual state?
No, he was pretty aggressive about it.
Exactly. He snapped at him. He called him a fool. The correction was a vehicle for his own anger and his own desire to establish hierarchy. The commentary has a profound, chilling line here. Whoever mentions a fault buys it for himself.
Oh, wow. Whoever mentions a fault buys it for himself.
Yeah.
That is heavy.
Right.
Because it means the moment you point your finger at someone else's flaw, you were instantly adopting a flaw of your own.
Exactly. You are adopting the flaw of arrogance, of judgment, and of abandoning your own internal work to police someone else. When you are truly focused on your own inner state, when you are truly in prayer, you don't have the bandwidth to monitor the guy next to you. The very fact that you noticed his flaw means you were already distracted.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And the fourth man is obviously the most dangerous of them all because his arrogance is camouflaged.
Heavily camouflaged.
He isn't scolding anyone directly. He is wrapping his massive ego in the language of gratitude and piety. Praise be to God, I am not like them.
That is the ultimate trick of the ego. It co-opts the language of spirituality to reinforce its own supremacy. It uses virtue as a weapon.
Just open any social media app,
Yeah.
and you can watch the four men in the mosque playing out in real time.
Oh, every single day.
It's the entire architecture of internet discourse. Someone makes a mistake or says something clumsy. That's the first person.
Right.
Then someone quote tweets them with an aggressive, self-righteous call-out. That's the second person. Then a third person makes a viral video mocking the call-out culture of the second person, pointing out their hypocrisy.
The meta-superiority.
Exactly. And then there's the rest of us, the fourth person, quietly sipping our coffee, scrolling through the feed, thinking, wow, I am so glad I'm so much more enlightened and above the drama than all these toxic people.
And in doing so, we have completely lost our own focus. We've broken our own prayer. The commentary is warning us that the ego loves nothing more than a justified grievance. It loves being right more than it loves being at peace. Because when you are right, you don't have to look at your own shadows.
And what happens when you scale this psychological flaw up? Like, what happens when it's not just four guys in a room, but an entire community operating on the ego of the fourth man?
You get a disaster.
You get the next story in the text. The Mosque of Dirar, or the Hypocrite's Mosque.
This is where we move from individual psychology to institutional pathology. The Mosque of Dirar was a real historical event mentioned in the text.
Okay.
It involves a group of hypocrites, people who outwardly claimed to be part of the Muslim community, but secretly harbored deep resentment and wanted to destroy it from the inside.
But they didn't just grab swords and attack. They used the ultimate fourth man strategy. They decided to build their own rival mosque.
Very clever.
And they didn't build it looking like a villain's lair. The text says it was gorgeous, beautiful carpets, stunning architecture,
Right.
but the foundation was pure toxicity.
Right.
It was built specifically to create a splinter group, to divide the community, and to invite a known enemy of the prophet to come and use it as a base of operations.
The architecture of virtue used to mask the intent of vice. But an institution needs legitimacy to function.
Right, so they needed the ultimate endorsement. They went to the prophet to get his blessing, and the language they used to manipulate him is so perfectly documented in the commentary.
It's brilliant PR.
It really is.
Yeah.
They use the sweetest, most unassailable philanthropic language imaginable. They told him, oh, we built this lovely mosque for the poor, for the sick, for the elderly who can't walk all the way to the main mosque on rainy days. It's an act of pure charity. Please come and bless it by praying in it just once.
They knew that if they framed their malice as an accessibility initiative for the elderly, it would be almost impossible to criticize them without looking like a monster.
You can't argue with helping the elderly on rainy days.
You really can't. They even brought out copies of the Quran, swearing heavy oaths on it that their intentions were purely to help the vulnerable.
This maps so perfectly onto modern corporate behavior, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It is the exact playbook of corporate greenwashing.
Yeah.
Imagine a massive conglomerate that has a terrible record of polluting local rivers and busting unions. Suddenly, they launch a highly publicized, multi-million-dollar green charity drive. They build a beautiful, elite-certified community center in the middle of town. They hire celebrity spokespeople. They swear up and down it's all for the community.
But the actual hidden strategic goal is to bankrupt a local, genuinely grassroots environmental group by siphoning off all the local grant money and PR oxygen,
Right.
and to create such a massive halo effect that government regulators just look the other way on their pollution.
Yes. The exterior is a beautiful charity, but the foundation is a weapon. So how does the prophet handle this? Because if he attacks them, he looks like he hates charity and the elderly. If he blesses it, he legitimizes a toxic splinter group.
He employs a brilliant mechanism of delay.
Okay.
He doesn't immediately attack them, but he doesn't agree either. He says he is about to leave on a military expedition, and he will consider their request when he returns. And the text suggests that this delay allows the divine truth of their intentions to surface.
Time reveals everything.
Time is the enemy of hypocrisy. During that delay, the reality of their plot is revealed to him.
And when he figures it out, the commentary gives us this incredible metaphor to describe their manipulation. It says, oaths are the shield of the deceitful.
Let's unpack the psychology of that. Why does a liar swear so vehemently?
Because they're overcompensating.
Exactly. Because they know their actions have no inherent weight. The commentary points out that truly righteous people don't need to hide behind excessive oaths or massive PR campaigns. Their actions and their clear visions speak for themselves. If you have to constantly remind everyone how good, pure, and charitable your motives are, you are overcompensating for a deficit in reality.
The text uses a phrase that I literally can't stop thinking about. Words without heart are like weeds growing on a garbage dump. Don't smell them or eat them.
It's a visceral image. The hypocrites had the beautiful words, the green, flourishing weeds on the surface, but the soil underneath was a literal garbage dump of division, envy, and malice.
Disgusting.
Right. No matter how pretty the weed is, its root system is drawing nutrients from toxic waste. Ultimately, upon his return, the prophet orders the Mosque of Dire to be burned and torn down, and the site was turned into an actual garbage dump, forcing its physical reality to match its spiritual reality.
Wow. It really forces you to audit your own life. Like, are you building a Mosque of Dire in your own relationships?
That's the tough question.
It is. Are you doing a good deed, like hosting a dinner party or buying a gift or taking on extra work just to spite someone else or to prove a point or to look like the martyr on paper while secretly harboring deep resentment?
It demands an agonizing level of self-honesty because we are so adept at hiding our garbage dumps under a layer of weeds. We genuinely convince ourselves that we're just trying to help the elderly on rainy days.
Which brings us to the most complex, honestly mind-bending part of this entire deep dive.
Here we go.
If our own brain is capable of building an entire fake mosque, of constructing these massive, intricate architectures of hypocrisy just to look good,
Yeah.
who or what is actually drawing the blueprints?
Right.
How do we become so incredibly blind to our own motives? Who teaches the ego how to lie this well?
To answer that, the text presents a dialogue that feels like a psychological thriller. It is a debate between a human and the ultimate personification of deception. It's the story of Muawiyah and Iblis, or Satan.
The setup is incredible. Muawiyah, who was a prominent early Islamic figure, is asleep in his palace. The doors are locked from the inside. He is completely secure. He's exhausted.
Safe as can be.
Suddenly, a mysterious figure shakes him awake and says, "Get up. It's time for morning prayer. You're gonna miss it." Muawiyah wakes up startled, looks at the figure, and realizes with absolute horror that the person who just woke him up to pray is the devil.
The ultimate antagonist of faith, breaking into a palace to act as an alarm clock for a pious man.
I mean, my first thought would be that I'm still dreaming. Why would the devil want me to pray?
It makes no logical sense.
None. And Muawiyah refuses to buy it. He immediately challenges Satan, basically saying, "You are the enemy of mankind. You exist to drag us away from the divine. This has to be a trick. It's like a known convicted thief breaking into my house and claiming he's just the new night watchman. I don't believe you. Tell me the real reason."
And this initiates Satan's defense. This is where the text brilliantly exposes the mechanisms of our own internal rationalizations. Satan does not cower. He doesn't act like a cartoon villain with a pitchfork.
Right, he's smooth.
Incredibly smooth. He presents a series of incredibly sophisticated, heartbreakingly persuasive arguments. When you read Satan's dialogue here, he sounds exactly like the most intellectual, philosophical parts of our own minds when we are trying to justify our own toxic behavior.
It's terrifying how much sense he makes.
Yeah.
Let's debate these arguments because they map perfectly onto modern psychology.
Let's do it.
The first argument Satan uses is what I call the nostalgia argument. What does he say?
Satan looks at Muawiyah and says, "Remember, before I was a devil, I was an angel. I was the closest being to the divine. My umbilical cord was cut with divine love."
Wow.
Yeah. He says, "Do you really think someone who has tasted that kind of proximity can ever truly forget their first love? I'm just a tragic lover. Yes, I was cast out, but deep down, my core is still angelic. Waking you up was just a reflex of my original, pure nature."
Oh my God. He's playing the victim.
Completely.
He's using his past trauma to excuse his current identity. He's saying, "I'm not fundamentally bad. I'm just misunderstood. And my history proves that deep down, I have a good heart."
It's the weaponization of nostalgia and victimhood.
Yeah.
How often does the ego do exactly this? Yes, I lashed out at my partner. Yes, I lied to my boss, but you have to understand where I come from. My childhood was hard. Deep down, I'm a good person who just has trauma reflexes.
Oh, man.
The ego uses its own history as a shield against accountability in the present moment.
But Wally doesn't fall for it. He basically says, "Nice try, but you're still the devil." So Satan pivots to his second argument, which is even more sophisticated, the touchstone argument.
This is a masterclass in shifting the locus of control. Satan claims he doesn't actually create evil.
He doesn't create it.
No. He says, "I am just a mehank, a touchstone. A touchstone doesn't make a coin fake. It just reveals whether the coin is real gold or counterfeit. God created me to test humanity. I just throw grass and bones in front of an animal to see if it's a sheep or a wolf. I don't force them to eat it. I'm just doing my job. I provide the test, you make the choice."
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah,
That is so insidious. He's intellectualizing cruelty as a necessary systemic function.
exactly. He's claiming to be a structural necessity.
But wait, isn't that kind of true? Like, we do need adversity to grow. We need resistance to build muscle.
Yeah.
Isn't he just providing the resistance?
And that is exactly why the argument is so dangerous. It takes a partial truth, that adversity reveals character, and uses it to absolve the instigator of malice.
Oh, I see.
It's the ego saying, "I had to be brutally harsh to my employee to teach them a lesson. I'm just playing devil's advocate to strengthen their argument." We convince ourselves we are performing a necessary public service when we are actually just being cruel. We dress our malice up as tough love or necessary friction.
But Muawiyah still doesn't buy it. He knows he's being manipulated. Satan brings out the big guns, the final, most philosophically dense defense, the predestination argument.
This is the ego's nuclear option, determinism. Satan argues that his original sin, refusing to bow to Adam, was actually an act of radical, jealous love for God.
Jealous love.
Yeah. He says, "I loved God so much I couldn't bow to anyone else." And furthermore, he says, "My loss in this game was pre-written on the chessboard of destiny. God moved the pieces. I was destined to fall before I was even created, so how can you possibly blame me for my actions?"
I mean, this is basically modern neuroscience and behavioral determinism. My brain chemistry made me do it. My genetics, my upbringing, the socioeconomic factors of my environment, it was all predetermined. I have no free will, therefore I have no guilt.
Exactly.
It's the ego completely absolving itself of any agency. I couldn't help but cheat. I couldn't help but lie. It was just the universe unfolding.
It is the ultimate intellectual fortress. If everything is destiny, then accountability is a myth. The ego uses theology, philosophy, and science to build a wall around its own bad behavior. And this raises the critical question of the text. If the ego is this persuasive, if it can use our own intelligence against us this flawlessly, how do we ever defeat it?
Because Muawiyah realizes he is losing the debate. You cannot out-debate Satan, because the intellect is Satan's home turf.
He owns that territory.
He is the barefoot philosopher we talked about earlier, pure, ungrounded, optimized intellect. If you try to use logic to defeat the master of rationalization, you will lose.
So Muawiyah changes the rules of engagement. He stops arguing theory. He stops engaging with the philosophical smoke and mirrors. He grabs Satan, figuratively pins him to the wall, and relies on sheer, stubborn spiritual intuition.
He just cuts through the noise.
He says, "Stop spinning words. I don't care about your theology. I demand the naked truth. Why did you wake me up? Tell me now, or I will not let you leave."
And this is where the grand reveal happens. The twist that changes everything. Satan finally cracks under the pressure of pure, unyielding sincerity. He drops all the philosophical defenses and admits the real reason he woke Muawiyah up.
He says, "All right, fine. You caught me. If I had let you oversleep and miss your morning prayer, you would have woken up hours later. And when you realized you missed your appointment with the divine, your heart would have shattered. You would have let out a deep, agonizing sigh of regret. You would have felt a burning, devastating heartache for having failed."
And the text reveals a profound piece of spiritual math here.
It does.
Satan explains. That single, genuine sigh of broken-hearted regret, that absolute humility and longing is worth more to the divine than hundreds of rote, mechanical, on-time prayers.
Such an incredible concept.
I woke you up to do your standard half-asleep prayer so that I could rob you of that greater reward.
Yeah.
I gave you the lesser good to steal the ultimate good.
I want to pause and let the gravity of that sink in. Satan wanted to save him from a broken heart, because a broken heart is the only thing that truly unconditionally connects the human being to the divine.
Wow.
The ego's ultimate trick is managing our lives so perfectly, keeping us so completely within the bounds of good behavior and optimized routines, that we never experience the vulnerability required for real transformation.
That is devastatingly insightful. It completely upends how we measure success in personal growth. Think about it. We are so obsessed with our streaks. I haven't missed a day on my meditation app in 300 days.
Yeah.
I go to the gym every morning at 5 a.m. I eat perfectly.
And you become incredibly proud of that streak. The checklist keeps you comfortable. The checklist feeds the fourth man in the mosque who says, "Praise be, I'm not like those who oversleep."
Yes. The ego says, please, go to the gym, do your journaling, do your mechanical prayers, just don't ever fail. Because if you fail, your heart might break open and you might actually realize you aren't in control. Satan waking Muawiyah up is the ego giving us a perfect attendance record, so we never have to feel the crushing, beautiful weight of surrender.
The sigh of regret burns away the veil of self-satisfaction. A perfect streak of habits builds pride. A broken heart builds empathy, connection, and absolute sincerity.
But, and this is a massive but, we have to be careful here.
Very careful.
If the sigh of regret and the broken heart are the highest spiritual currency, doesn't that mean we should go out and look for failure? Shouldn't we deliberately mess up or seek out suffering just to get that deep spiritual reward?
That is the logical, albeit incredibly dangerous, next step the mind takes, and the commentary anticipates it perfectly. There is a very fine line between accepting the purifying fire of suffering when it comes and masochistically setting yourself on fire.
Which brings us to the story of the sick companion. This is where we learn that suffering is a tool, not a destination. And this story is intense.
It is hard to read.
Yeah. There's a companion of the prophet who has become dangerously ill. He is painfully thin, practically a skeleton, suffering immensely. The prophet goes to visit him and is shocked by his physical deterioration. He looks at the man and asks, "Have you been praying for something unusual? Did you ask for this?"
The prophet recognizes that this isn't just a natural illness. It has the distinct signature of a self-inflicted spiritual burden.
And the man confesses. He says, "Yes. I realized I was full of flaws and sins, and I was terrified of the punishment in the afterlife. So I prayed to God, whatever punishment or purification you have for me in the next world, just give it to me right now in this world so I can get it over with."
It's an extreme, ancient version of what we might call toxic spiritual productivity. the desire to speedrun karma.
Right. It's like someone today saying, I want to heal my inner child and clear all my trauma, so I'm going to subject myself to the most triggering, traumatic environments possible, confront every toxic person in my past simultaneously until I break through and become immune.
Which sounds brave on paper.
It sounds brave, but it's actually incredibly destructive.
And it's rooted in a subtle form of arrogance. The assumption that you are strong enough to process all your shadows at once. The prophet's response to the sick man is deeply compassionate but very firm. He tells him, you must never pray for that. You do not have the strength of a mountain. You are a frail ant. You cannot bear the crushing weight of divine rigor.
The metaphor of the frail ant is so necessary. It's an acknowledgement of our biological and psychological limitations. We are not built to process infinite suffering.
The prophet teaches him a different prayer, a famous one that asks for goodness and beauty in both worlds, this one and the next. The commentary uses beautiful imagery to explain this balance.
Like what?
It says we should never ask for the fire of suffering. But when suffering inevitably does come on its own, through the natural course of life, it acts as a purifier. It describes how the fire of anger or hardship can be transformed into the greenery of patience.
The greenery of patience. It means you don't burn down your own house just to test if your fire extinguisher works.
Great analogy.
But if a fire starts naturally, you use the extinguisher. And what grows from the ashes is resilience and patience.
Precisely. The text compares hardships to a midwife for the soul. Without the pain of labor, the spiritual child cannot be born. But you do not artificially induce labor when there is no baby.
Right.
You wait for the natural process. The suffering we encounter naturally in life illness, the loss of a job, a broken relationship, disappointment, is perfectly calibrated to our capacity to grow from it. When we artificially seek suffering out of pride, we are acting like the ant trying to bench press the mountain.
Okay, but this inevitably leads to the age-old philosophical question, which the text also tackles head-on. If God is perfectly good, and if he doesn't want us to suffer unnecessarily, why did he create the fire at all? Why create disease or pain or ugly situations? Why is there a shadow side to existence?
The commentary provides a fascinating aesthetic answer to the problem of evil. It asks us to compare the divine to a master painter. A master painter is, of course, capable of painting breathtakingly beautiful subjects, angels, blooming flowers, radiant light, joyous scenes.
Sure. But to truly prove his absolute comprehensive mastery over all forms of existence, the painter must also be able to paint hideous demons, terrifying storms, and deep, impenetrable shadows.
So just because the painter paints an ugly demon, it doesn't mean the painter himself is ugly or evil?
Exactly. The text argues that the existence of ugliness or evil in the world is proof of the creator's unlimited capability. If the painter only knew how to paint beauty, his skill would be fundamentally limited. The shadows give depth to the light. The ugly paintings demonstrate the absolute range of his art.
It's like watching a brilliant actor. If an actor like Daniel Day-Lewis plays a terrifying, evil, irredeemable villain perfectly, you don't leave the theater thinking, wow, Daniel Day-Lewis is an evil monster. You think, wow, what an incredible performance, what range, what mastery of the craft. Yes. And the challenge for us as the audience to this cosmic painting is to accept the full canvas, not just the parts we find pleasant or comfortable. We suffer deeply when we demand that the canvas only contain light. Which brings us to the story of the old man and the doctor, which is entirely about our fierce, often comical resistance to the reality of the canvas.
I love this story because it is so brutally grounded in everyday life. An old man goes to a doctor's clinic. He sits down and complains, "Doctor, my eyesight is getting terrible. Everything is blurry. I can barely read."
A standard complaint.
Right. The doctor looks at him and calmly says, "It's old age." The old man frowns, annoyed by the short answer, and says, "Okay, well, my back is in constant agony. I can barely stand up straight." The doctor nods and says, "That's also from old age."
The old man is not going to like this.
He's getting visibly irritated now. "Well, my digestion is ruined. I can't eat anything without feeling sick." The doctor sighs and says, "Yes, indigestion is also a symptom of old age."
The doctor is providing the ultimate, inescapable diagnosis. He is pointing to the inevitable entropy of the physical vessel.
Right. And the old man finally loses it. He gets furious, turns bright red, and starts screaming at the doctor. "Is that all you know how to say? Old age! Old age! You're a terrible doctor. You have no medical skills. You're an idiot." And the doctor, completely unbothered, looks at him and says, "That sudden flash of anger, that inability to control your temper and your anxiety, that is also from old age."
It's deeply comedic, but the underlying psychology is profound. Why do we resist reality so fiercely? The old man is demanding a medical cure for a condition that isn't a disease. It's the natural trajectory of physical existence. He wants the doctor to fix time.
It's exactly like getting mad at your car's check engine light, or taking a car with 300,000 miles on it to a mechanic and screaming, "Fix it so it runs like it just rolled off the showroom floor."
Right.
And the mechanic is looking at you saying, "Buddy, the engine has 1/3 of a million miles on it, the gaskets are going to leak, parts wear out." We spend so much emotional energy fighting the reality of our physical limits.
And the commentary offers a solution to this resistance. It acknowledges that the physical body must decline. It is part of the ugly painting, the shadow on the canvas of time. However, it explicitly contrasts the physical body with the spiritual state. It describes the fully realized saintly individual as someone who is old and decaying on the outside, but remains a vibrant, joyful child on the inside.
Because their identity isn't tied to the car engine. They know the car is breaking down, they accept that the suspension is shot, but the driver inside the car is perfectly fine enjoying the scenery.
Exactly. The old man in the clinic is suffering not just from failing eyesight, but from his non-acceptance of his failing eyesight. His ego is at war with entropy. The text suggests that true wisdom, unlike the barefoot philosopher's useless intellect, is accepting the decline of the outer form while aggressively nurturing the eternal youth of the inner spirit.
But how do we actually do that? How do we become that vibrant child on the inside? Especially if someone is listening to this right now and thinking, okay, I understand the theory, I want to be wise, I want to have that inner youth, but honestly, I feel completely lost. My motives are impure, I'm mostly driven by my ego, I want to look good, and I feel like a fake.
It's a very common feeling.
If the ego is as smart as Satan in the bedroom, how do we ever begin a genuine spiritual journey?
That is the central anxiety of anyone trying to improve themselves. And the text offers a brilliant, highly counterintuitive solution. It addresses exactly what to do when you feel lost or when you start out as a total fraud.
This is the story of the man searching for the camel. And it might be my absolute favorite piece of the whole commentary because it is the ultimate fake it till you make it philosophy, but applied to the soul.
It's a beautiful metaphor.
So imagine a man wandering in the desert who has genuinely lost his camel. This camel was his entire livelihood, his transportation, his wealth. He is desperate. He is running around sweating, screaming, asking everyone he sees, "Have you seen my camel? It has a red mark on its left leg. It's missing half of its right ear. I will pay a massive financial reward to anyone who helps me find it."
Note the state of this man. His search is fueled by authentic desperation, acute pain, and absolute sincerity. He has genuinely lost something vital.
Total sincerity. Now, there is a second man watching this happen. The second man hasn't lost anything. He's just greedy.
Right.
He hears the word reward, and his ego lights up. He thinks, hey, I want a piece of that money. So he starts running right alongside the first man, mimicking his desperation. He starts yelling to the crowd, "Yes, I lost a camel too. Have you seen it? It has a red mark on its leg. It's missing an ear." He is completely parroting the true seeker, purely out of a desire for financial gain and attention.
If we pause here, the psychological parallel is incredibly clear. The faker represents our own ego when we start a new positive habit or a spiritual practice for entirely the wrong reasons.
Right. You start meditating not to find inner peace, but because you want to post about it on Instagram and look enlightened. You join a charity board because it looks fantastic on your resume. You are running alongside true seekers, shouting about the camel, but your motives are entirely selfish and hollow.
But the commentary provides an incredible twist regarding the mechanics of human behavior. Behavioral psychology tells us about cognitive dissonance and behavioral activation. The idea that if you act out a behavior long enough, your brain will eventually adopt the underlying belief to resolve the dissonance between your actions and your identity.
Oh, interesting.
The text anticipates this beautifully. As the faker runs alongside the true, desperate seeker, the sheer heat of the true seeker's sincerity begins to affect him. By sharing the physical space and mimicking the actions of someone who is truly passionate, the faker starts to become infected by that passion.
Sincerity is contagious.
Exactly. The text explicitly states that the truth of the sincere seeker infected the faker. The action, even though it started as a lie, began to rewire his internal state.
So they run together for hours, deep into the harsh desert. They are exhausted. Finally, they crest a sand dune and they spot a camel in the distance. The true seeker bursts into tears of joy and yells, "There it is, that's my camel."
A moment of triumph.
But the faker stops dead in his tracks. He stares at the camel and suddenly a repressed, deeply buried memory surfaces in his mind. He realizes with absolute shock that he actually did lose a camel years and years ago. He had just completely forgotten about it because he was so distracted by worldly greed and the hustle of daily life.
It is a stunning metaphor for spiritual amnesia and awakening.
The faker turns to the true seeker trembling and says, I was mocking you, I was using you, I was faking my search just to get your reward money, but your genuine desperation opened my eyes, and now I remember my own lost soul. My fake search has become real.
What Tahirul Mevlevi is arguing here is incredibly liberating. It destroys the perfectionist trap.
How so?
The text is saying, do not wait until your motives are 100% pure to start seeking the truth or to start doing good. Because if you wait for pure motives, the ego will ensure you never start.
Wow, yeah.
Start with your messy, greedy, ego-driven motives. Fake it. Copy the actions of sincere people. Mingle with those who possess the broken heart we talked about earlier, because the physical action of searching, if done alongside truth, will eventually shatter your amnesia and awaken your own forgotten sincerity. The lie becomes the vehicle for the truth.
That takes so much pressure off. You don't have to be perfect to begin. Just start running and yelling about the camel, and eventually you'll remember what you lost.
And this quest, this physical journey to remember what we have lost, ties directly into the commentary's final major metaphor, the story of Jonah and the whale.
How does the text interpret Jonah? Because usually that's just a story about a guy getting swallowed by a giant fish.
The commentary uses Jonah as a profound allegory for the human condition. The whale is our physical body and our worldly circumstances, the dark, constraining, inescapable environment we find ourselves trapped in. The Jonah inside the whale is our trapped spirit, that vibrant inner child, the forgotten camel.
So we are all Jonah. We are all swallowed by the demands of the physical world, paying rent, dealing with traffic, managing the old man's failing eyesight and bad digestion. We are inside the beast.
Exactly. But the key to the metaphor is how Jonah escaped. He didn't escape by pulling out a sword and trying to hack his way through the whale's ribs.
That wouldn't work anyway.
Right. He didn't fight the physical reality of his confinement. That would be like the old man screaming at the doctor. Instead, Jonah escaped through tasbih, through deep mindfulness, acceptance, and praising the divine from within the darkness. The text says that the fish of the soul are swimming all around us in this ocean of existence, but we are too blind to see them because we are obsessively focused on the fleshy walls of the whale.
We're so focused on staring at the check engine light that we forget we are on a road trip.
Precisely. By engaging in mindfulness, by remembering the divine, even while trapped in the mundane, dark reality of the belly of the whale eventually swims to the shore and spits Jonah out into liberation. The physical body and its limitations aren't the enemy to be destroyed. They are the vessel that, through mindful endurance, delivers the soul to its ultimate destination.
Wow. Okay. Let's take a breath and zoom out, because we have covered an incredible amount of psychological ground today. We started with the Bedouin, who taught us to reject the barefoot philosopher, because optimizing our intellect is useless if it leaves our soul starving. We learned that sometimes you have to play the fool on a stick horse to protect your pure jewel of intellect from being corrupted by institutions.
We saw the ego's traps through the 4 Hindus in the mosque, realizing that correcting others is often just a dopamine hit for our own arrogance, and that whoever mentions a fault buys it for himself.
We scaled that up to the Mosque of Durar, where we saw how institutions weaponize virtue, using sweet words as weeds to cover their toxic garbage dumps. Then we survived Satan's absolute masterclass in rationalization, realizing his ultimate trick is keeping us perfectly comfortable so he can rob us of a broken heart. That sigh of genuine regret that actually connects us to truth.
We learned from the sick companion that we shouldn't seek out suffering like a frail ant trying to carry a mountain. But when the check engine light of life comes on, like the old man at the doctor, we must accept the physical decline of the whale while keeping the inner Jonah vibrant.
And finally, that it is entirely okay to start out faking it. If you run alongside true seekers, the friction of their sincerity might just help you remember the camel you lost years ago. Which brings us to the end of our deep dive. And there is one final, very brief, very dark, but incredibly funny story in the text that wraps this entire philosophy up perfectly.
The story of Juha and the crying child.
Yes. So the character Juha, who is a recurring figure in Middle Eastern folklore, sort of the classic holy fool, is walking down the street with his father. They pass a funeral procession. The young son of the dead man is walking behind the coffin, weeping hysterically, and talking out loud to his dead father. The child cries out, "Oh, father, they are taking you to a terrible place, a place with no light, a place with no food, a place with no carpets on the floor to sit on, no doors to keep the cold wind out, and no welcoming neighbors to comfort you."
The child, in his grief, is just giving a literal, terrifyingly accurate description of a grief.
Right, but Juha, hearing this description, no light, no food, no carpets, no doors, no friends, stops dead in his tracks. He turns to his own father, his eyes wide with panic, and says, "Dad, we have to stop them. They must be taking him to our house."
It is fantastic dark humor, but the psychological analysis the text provides for this joke is piercing.
What's the final takeaway there?
The commentary warns that an unilluminated heart, a mind cut off from spiritual warmth, truth, and self-awareness, is exactly what Juha described. It is a house with no light, no nourishment, no comfort, and no connection. A person living entirely in their ego, entirely in their optimized intellect without any grounded wisdom, is essentially a grave walking around on two legs.
A grave walking around on two legs. Remember, at the very beginning of the show, we talked about that feeling of being woken up by the devil. How jarring and terrifying it is to realize your own mind is playing tricks on you. Well, this text just handed us the blueprint of those tricks. It showed us the fractures of our own hypocrisy, the tumors of our pride, and the absolute uselessness of an intellect that doesn't serve the heart. But it also showed us the cure.
And the cure is sincerity, even if it has to start as imitation. The cure is the sigh of regret. The cure is letting the heart break open so the light can get in.
Exactly. Ask yourself this as you go about your day. Look around the house of your own daily routine, your own recurring thoughts, and your own motives. Is it furnished with the light of the true seeker? Is there warmth and honesty and a willingness to be wrong? Or are you just sitting in the dark, complaining about the check engine light, pretending you haven't lost your camel? Take a moment today to open a window. You might be surprised by what you see outside.